Great to see you. Once again, I am actually now introducing another part of an occasional offline series in which I am meeting accomplished people who are talking about their lives and their careers and their inspirations, and at the same time also a little bit about offline. And I'm delighted to say that today I am being joined by Hannah Shergold, a very talented artist who will be talking a little bit about her work and indeed her association with the bornfree Foundation. So, Hannah, here we are.
Thank you.
A very successful private view the other day, in which indeed Virginia McKenna, who is one of the founders of the bornfree Foundation, was here to talk about her work. Tell us a little bit about, obviously, how you came to meet her, and obviously your connection with the organisation, and indeed the art you have created for this show.
Well, I did some fundraising for the Invictus Games last year, and this year I was looking to fundraise for a conservation charity. So I approached Will Travers, who's the president of the bornfree Foundation and son of Virginia McKenna. I approached him in December and said, I'd like to fundraise for your charity. I picked them because I'd been to a talk by Gordon Buchanan, who is
the naturalist
filmmaker. He'd done a wonderful talk in Winchester, and he had spoken very highly about the bornfree Foundation and about the fact that they weren't just fundraisers, they were real frontline doers. They used the money very efficiently that they were able to get their hands on. So I approached Will Travers, and I offered to partner my solo exhibition in London with their foundation and raise money for them, which they were delighted about. But it also gave a focus for me for what I was going to paint. And so I started the collection in January and spent 4 months painting it, and the theme was all wildlife and with a
Did you have an affinity with wildlife, particularly before bornfree came into your life, or were you recreating images as well?
I've had a very convoluted career path, which started my passion from very young was that I was going to be a vet. So I actually went to vet school at Cambridge University, and so my passion for animals has been lifelong, really.
Interesting. So obviously you, as you say, have taken a convoluted path, because clearly you started to become a veterinarian at university, then along the way you became a sculptor in bronze.
I did.
And having actually established that, you then decided to become an Army helicopter pilot.
Yes.
Which is, I have to say, by all reasonable measures, quite a significant step out of your comfort zone. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, the triggers for change have been a mixture, really, of either not being satisfied with what I'm doing at the time and wanting to change it, or forced change. The change from veterinary into sculpture was that I wasn't content with what I was doing. I was really passionate about doing art and more of it, and so I moved into sculpture then. But the sculpture business ran into the 2008 credit crunch, and it didn't survive. So frankly, I needed a job, and I was at a stage where I could have either used my Cambridge degree and gone for a job in the city, or I could do something completely off the wall at an age where I was still able to do it, and so I decided to join the army.
But did you start thinking, I want to actually be flying, or did you think, I want to somehow be in an organisation which would challenge me, take me to new places, or...
It was a mixture of both, really. I have a habit, I think, of applying for things because it's the most difficult thing you can possibly do. And I was very conscious that I wanted to make sure I wasn't just going for flying because it was the hardest thing you could get into. So I made myself choose 3 different corps or regiments within the army that I would be really happy with, one of which, my first choice, was the Army Air Corps, to be able to fly. So when I went into Sandhurst, I knew what I wanted to do, but if I didn't get it, then I knew there were other things that I'd be able to go for as well.
Now, bearing in mind, obviously, you, as you say, went right out of your comfort zone. What did you learn most of all about yourself, having actually left the army?
Having left the army, I think I do quite a lot of reading about psychology, and I find it, in a sort of non-arrogant way, I find myself fascinating in the way that I process things, and I get a lot of things wrong. And what I like reading about is why I make those decisions and why I keep doing certain things and how I can stop making bad decisions. And as an example, I suppose the pilot training attracts a certain type of personality, tend to be very logical, very direct, and sometimes, particularly working in the art field, that doesn't work.
I was going to ask you about the art, because obviously you're talking about your thought process and making mistakes along the way. So when you became a fully fledged artist and left the army, did you find you took some of that army training into the artistic process as well?
Not necessarily into the artistic process, but into the business side of running an art business. I'm slightly more. Some people are very sciencey or very arty. I'm sort of half and half, but they don't mix at the same time. I give myself 4 months to do full-on painting, and then I'll stop painting and use the sciencey bit to do all of the show prep, event prep, and really, delve into the marketing and the PR so that the show can be as successful as it possibly can be. And I do my reading on that as well, and a lot of research. So although I use both sides of the brain, as it were, they don't really mix at the same time.
You became an entrant into the Sky Arts Portrait of the Year award, which obviously I think you came originally as a wild card, and you just, a bit like Boris Becker, appeared out of nowhere and round by round simply took people by storm, and in the end you were in the final. And although you didn't actually win it, nevertheless it gave you a very attractive
Well, I didn't
profile.
get through to the semi-final. My picture didn't get through the heat, but in some ways that's been better, because people were talking about it, and I had a lot of support saying that people thought that the portrait should have gone through, and you never know what the judges are looking for, and I've got so much respect for what they choose, but it just wasn't my day. But arguably, because there was so much response, particularly on social media, it got people talking about it more than if I had gone through. So it did me no harm to be part of the competition, to not get through. Obviously, I had 2 rounds because I did the wildcard bit, and then I went into my heat, but it just didn't progress any further from there. But it was just the most fantastic experience, and to paint in these amazing places. First in the National Portrait Gallery, and then at the Wallace Collection, and it's a wonderful, very intense experience.
Are you a very demanding taskmaster of yourself?
Yes, very, very. I like paintings that challenge the brain and that force the brain to make up a lot of the work. So a lot of my paintings, if people see them, they see a herd of elephants. But actually, if you look really closely, half the ear won't be there. It probably hasn't got 4 legs. But until you point that out to somebody, they haven't really noticed it, and because their brain's done it all for them. And I love playing with that idea that you're giving people just enough information to make the picture, but not too much that it's easy.
I also think perfection can be measured in different ways. And of course, you can have an absolute likeness where, as you say, literally every spot, every feather on a bird is as it would be seen in a museum exhibit. And yet, on the other hand, what you're reflecting in part is almost the psychology of the animal, the way it moves, the way it throws water off its body, whatever it may be, which it's fantastic. So in terms of obviously your younger life, if you look back to when you were a girl, were there moments you think which actually started this journey for you? Maybe a trip you went, something you saw, or people you were influenced by?
I think I've always been interested in art, my mother taught art and textiles. My father, he's very good at the sort of he's an engineer by trade, and so he has a very good technical ability for drawing. But the reason this style came about was because traditionally I'm very, very, very tight with my painting because I want it to be accurate. Anatomically, I want it to be accurate, and in my sculptures, it would annoy me if the anatomy wasn't right. The style came about because I had once again gone too far with the painting, and I got cross with myself, and I took a knife, not to cut the canvas, but to scrape the paint off it in order to be able to step back. And I was cross with it, but then it was a sort of, oh, hang on a minute, actually there could be something in this, because it had done some very interesting things with how the paint had been dragged through. And because I use palette knives, I use very thick paint, and so the whole thing went from there, really. So it was a complete happy accident.
Often accidents are happy. We always think that an accident somehow is a disaster, but just bumping into somebody rather randomly in the street, or just going to a show which was far better than you ever imagined, is actually an example of how things are not always quite as bad as they may seem. Often opportunity or fresh ideas emerge in unexpected ways. Yeah, but you have a lot of positive energy. I mean, in a way, it seems to be a common thread through your life. So that's what you did at university, and obviously becoming a sculptor, and then going in the army, and then obviously learning a whole set of skills which probably you didn't know you had before. And then obviously, as an artist, you embrace other aspects as well. Just the management of your brand, frankly, writing the catalogue, making sure, I know from doing these things myself, even little things like the page numbering, the index, are the fonts the right size? Yeah, and it may seem very small, but actually, when you see the finished article and you got it right, you know it's worth it. And moreover, typically, that you were the best person to do it.
Well, I find that if you've got it right, people don't notice it. If you get it wrong, they will definitely notice it. So,
and they'll remind you about it afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a very charming way.
So I do spend a lot of time doing draft prints, and then I'll sit with it for a while, and I'll proofread it, and then I'll proofread it again, and then I'll get someone else to proofread it, and because something will come up, and but it's worth it. It is worth it to be able to have a product in the catalogue that is, it's another marketing tool that you can send out, and it is representing that product is representing you. Sure. Well, not just me as well. Bornfree, they've allowed me to use their brand and their logo, and it's emblazoned all over the back of the catalogue and inside the catalogue. So I've got a responsibility to them.
Do you anticipate working with them on an ongoing basis, or is this being reviewed year by year?
I think it's important to review it. I think as with any collaboration, you need to know what worked for each party, how you can make it better, what didn't work, and that's where collaboration with fundraising has to work like that. It can't be that if I just gave and I didn't get anything back, the fact is I can't afford to do it. The business won't survive, and so the business has to benefit for as much from the collaboration as as Born
I think it's
Free
all about
does.
building awareness, really. I think obviously Born Free has got the relative good fortune of having a story which I think has got universal appeal.
Yeah. Their overall motto is to keep wildlife in the wild, but they've got global projects. They do a lot with moon bears, tigers in captivity, lions. The lions, they've got 3 lions at the moment that were found in captivity in France, were being kept as pets. And so one of the big projects is to rehabilitate these lions and get them out to the game reserve that they run in South Africa. And it costs I believe £90,000 a year to run that game reserve. Now, if I can give 50. My theory is that the art has a job, and if I can, the art's job is a way of encouraging people to give money. As a bonus, they walk away with a painting, but really what they've done is they've given a big chunk of money to this organisation. And I like the fact that the art can do that. If this collection, at the Private View, 2 paintings were auctioned with 100% going to the foundation. That raised just over £20,000 for the 2. But they get 20% of the rest of the collection as well. So the total donation should be around about £50,000. And if I can do that that was my target, but if I can do that in 6 months, then what could we do in a year?
I was going to say, by the way, you were talking about, obviously, the transition from becoming a pilot to then, obviously, thinking about becoming an artist professionally. Was this a slow burn? Were you thinking after maybe a few years in the army, actually, as something, I love it, it's challenged me, I've grown as a person, I feel actually that it maybe was great for me at a moment in time, but actually I somehow want to go back to my roots? Or was it something where you just woke up one day?
No, actually, it was more that the first bit, yes, it was a case of I was getting to a stage where I'd done everything I wanted to do in the army, and I couldn't, obviously you change jobs on average every 2 years. My contract was ending in 2018. I knew I was going to leave. I didn't necessarily know what I was going to go and do. And the art, I had started painting in late 2015, early 2016 when I was deployed in Kenya. And it had continued from when I got back. Paintings were selling for not, massive money by any stretch, but on a sort of paint one, sell it model. But then I switched from watercolours to oils, the paintings started to get bigger, and suddenly it became a potentially viable way of making a living. I had about 15 months at this point left on my contract, and it was a case of, right, if we're going to go for it, let's spend the 15 months building it up as much as I possibly can with the time available, and sort of running the two alongside each other so that when I do leave, I can hit the ground running. And it went from there, really. And
are you very disciplined in your painting? Where you say, okay, it's 6:30 in the morning, I'm getting up, I'm doing 3 hours before breakfast, and then I'm going to do a bit more later on?
I do the other way around. Okay. I'm terrible in the morning,
like me.
But
So you warm me up by now. It's obviously now, whatever it is, 2:30, 3 o'clock, okay.
It would be quite normal for me to start painting at about 5 in the afternoon, but I would work right the way through for 18, 20 hours. I've accepted my lack of self-discipline in the mornings. Is there any point fighting what you naturally are, when you naturally prefer to work? Not really, because yes, when I had a full-time job and, the job starts at 8:30 and everyone leaves at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, fine, you need to get on with it. But the reality is I'm on flexi time. I can work whenever I am most efficient at working. I have no responsibility other than to make this business work and to pay my mortgage, and that's pretty much it. And so I do, and that partly enables you to make the big career change decisions. I'm going to leave a very decent, stable salary, throw that all out the window and go and paint pictures for a living. I can make those decisions, because if I lose all my money, then I can start again without impacting on anybody else. But yes, it would be very different if I had a family to support, or you just don't have that level of freedom.
Obviously, I was going to talk to you a little bit about offline, because obviously you are an offline advocate, which is great, and obviously offline is all about really randomness and serendipity. In terms of offline, obviously you've been a couple of times, you're coming next week to a dinner as well, but I mean, What is it that particularly appeals to you, apart from the fact that obviously a lot of interesting people, but do you find somehow that perhaps because a little bit of what you're doing is a bit solitary, well, you're your friends and so forth, but actually you're working on your own, and when you come to offline, there is an element, there are 25, 30 people, most of whom never seen or heard from before at all, and there's a little bit of surprise, which I think is very important in life generally.
Absolutely, and I think that there is always there's always a chance that you've got nothing in common with everybody that turns up, but it's highly unlikely. And there'll always be people there that you just, because they're from all sorts of trades and walks of life, there's always something to talk about. There's always something where you think, oh, I've got a bit of experience with that, or I wanted to know about that, and the kind of conversations that it leads to are, that's why I go, really, because I find the whole thing fascinating.
I do remember the very first time you came, somebody else you met who I didn't know either was Eugene Jilks, who was, I think, a bronze or silver Olympic medalist in, what was it, the decathlon. He was a training partner of Daley Thompson, who was obviously a very major figure in British athletics. And again, he was unexpectedly, as a charming, thoughtful, wise, excellent company. And again, I found again and again, I'm actually, the couple of people I think I met the other day, who I think are coming next week as well, from your show. And it's just the fact that something I find in life, when you are open to possibilities, there's a sense to be surprised on the upside. I think most people are very much too worried about when they go wrong rather than when they go right. And I just found with offline, it really comes in the right spirit, which is really where I was getting at before. It has its own kind of momentum. And after, I don't really do anything. I tell a few stories, but really, it's all about the people. It's about creating opportunity, friendships, relationships, interesting conversations. You say, may not actually go anywhere, but that's not really the point. It's the fact that you're there and you feel that you've got some value, you fit in, and that we are always learning. And that for me, in a way, obviously having hosted numerous dinners over the years, it's all about the people. And the fact that we met, again, randomly because of the Ashurst Art Prize, and I think I turned up one evening to talk, or maybe even not to talk, I think I was just in the crowd.
Yep.
I asked a question, and I think actually the individual concerned wasn't terribly pleased with my question, and as a result, most people like yourself came up afterwards and we got chatting. But I think to myself, that is actually what I think life is all about. I feel that in the modern world, things are far too prescriptive, far too ordered. And the very fact, as you said, you came across your technique with the pictures, really almost in a fit of pique.
Yes.
So it worked very well. Okay, what are you doing? It's like, oh my God, it's like inspiration strikes.
And this is what I mean about being slightly superstitious, in that all these sort of chance meetings and people that, if you let it run, it will lead to something. You don't know what it is yet, but something good will come of all the things that start to go slightly wrong. In my slightly twisted non-scientific logic, it's going wrong for a reason, because it's leading to something that will go even better. And
yeah, so I think you've got a very positive attitude, which is great. It's probably why you've been successful in so many things you've done. Actually, whatever you've done, it seems to me you've done with a level of accomplishment, which is fantastic.
I think I think I've learnt that from my parents. My mother in particular, who at various times has been very unwell, but she always had the attitude that there's no point worrying about things that you can't control, and it's just a waste of energy. And someone that continued to work when she was very poorly, and we've just been brought up like that, and so it's not, I think that's in my blood, really, to be positive about things. We just always have been.
Look, I think like everything else in life, success breeds success. You find there's a formula that works for you, kind of typically you want to repeat it, not exactly, but somehow there's a sense of replicating what has actually done well for you in the past. Look, can I say first things first, it's been a real pleasure seeing you again. very
a
interesting to
pleasure.
hear about, obviously, your show. It's been a great success. Delighted about the Born-Free collection. Hope it's a great success for them as well. Look forward to collaborating with you in the future and other things, obviously, offline and otherwise. And look forward to maybe doing another interview in the future.
Fantastic.
Super. Great to see
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Done.